Good morning and welcome. It's 11 a.m., so we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to Florida Friendly Landscaping. Let's dig deep. Can you believe it? Today is the last day of our webinar series. This is day number 7, and of course my phone's ringing, right? So this is day number 7, and we're going to cover the last 2 principles of Florida Friendly Landscaping today. We're going to cover principle number 8 and principle number 9. So principle number 8 is reduce stormwater runoff, and principle number 9 is protect the waterfront. My name is Jennifer Pelham, and I'm the County Extension Director and Urban Horticulture Agent here with the University of Florida IFAS Extension in Martin County. So as always, I'd like to remind everyone, especially if this is your first time joining us today, is what is Florida Friendly Landscaping? It is an integrated approach to maintaining an attractive, colorful, and diverse yard. The purpose is that we want to educate Floridians about science-based landscaping practices. So these are environmentally friendly landscaping practices that help reduce the inputs into the landscape and to help reduce pollution and to conserve and protect our water resources. So these are the 9 principles, and we have gone through principle 1 through 7 in previous webinars. If you missed a webinar, just let me know and I can send you out the recording. And today we're going to cover principles number 8 and 9, reduce stormwater runoff and protect the waterfront. So this is the Florida Yards and Neighborhoods Handbook. This is available free online, or you can always stop by our office and pick up a free copy. This publication contains information about all the 9 principles that we have covered over the last 7 weeks. So let's get started with principle number 8, reduce stormwater runoff. And what is stormwater runoff? Stormwater runoff is excess water from irrigation, rain, and other sources. So either when it rains and the rain hits the impervious surfaces like the sidewalk, the road, your driveway, and it runs down into the storm drains, that's considered stormwater runoff. Or if you irrigate too much and the ground becomes saturated so that the soil can't hold any more water and the water starts running off and goes down into the storm drain, that's stormwater runoff. And if you wash your car, and the water from washing your car goes into the storm drain. So any water that goes into the storm drain is considered stormwater runoff. Now in natural areas, so if we were just out in the woods or a natural area, only 10% of the stormwater from rain is actually considered runoff. 40% of it returns to the atmosphere through evaporation, evapotranspiration, which is either evaporation through the leaves of plants or also just a regular evaporation from the sun. But 50% of that groundwater is used to support the vegetation in that area and also replenishes the groundwater. So most of it is absorbed on site. And that's the goal that we want to do in our landscape. We want to absorb that water on site because it's free water from Mother Nature. Let's keep it where it lands instead of it going off into the storm drain and into our waterways. Hopefully you've seen these signs around town that say only rain down the drain or let only rain down the storm drain. These are important because this is the only thing you want allowed down in the storm drain is rain and water. The reason is that the storm water that goes down into these storm drains is not treated like other water is treated that we use for drinking. This water goes right into the nearest body of water. So the nearest body of water could be a retention pond. It could be a stream. It could be a lake. It could be the lagoon. It could be the ocean. So wherever that storm drain leads to, as we know, everything eventually is going to go into the lagoon or to the ocean here in Martin County, but it does not go through a treatment plant first. And that's important to remember when we talk about stormwater and pollution. So any rainfall that falls on the impervious surfaces, or like I said, any irrigation or washing your car, any of that water. Impervious surfaces include rooftops, driveways, parking lots, roads, sidewalks, your patio, etc. Any rain that is not absorbed on site is considered the stormwater. And we have a higher percentage of rainfall is stormwater runoff in areas where it's developed, obviously, because we have more of those impervious surfaces. So like I said, in the natural areas, we have very little runoff, only 10%, but we have much higher percentage. And that is unknown because it depends community by community. But just understand the more impervious surfaces, meaning that water can't absorb through those surfaces like concrete and roofs, the more runoff there is. So as rainfall goes into these storm drains, you can imagine it is picking up a lot of things on its way to the storm drain. So it's picking up pollutants. It could be picking up fertilizer. It could be picking up leaves, sticks, oil, a lot of different things as it heads into the drain. So if you look closely at the photo on the top left, there's some fertilizer pellets. So after fertilizing your lawn, those fertilizer pellets should be swept back up into the lawn or back up into the fertilizer bag. You don't want to leave those on the sidewalk because they can be picked up by the stormwater and taken down into the stormwater drain and cause pollution to our water. You can see the storm drain that's filled with leaves and sticks. That is not something you want either, because again, those leaves are going to go into the waterways and can cause pollution. And one main concern is grass clippings. Grass clippings are high in nitrogen, and nitrogen is considered a pollutant in our waterways. So when grass clippings go down into the storm drain, that just helps to pollute our waters and also feed the invasive aquatic plants that are in the waterways. Any type of waste from our pets, especially dogs, you want to make sure that you pick up any dog waste because that is also considered a pollutant. It's not considered a fertilizer in urban areas. It's actually a pollutant because it can be taken up by the stormwater and goes down to the storm drain. And of course, it's high in nitrogen and also carries a lot of diseases. And then also any oil and other pollutants that come from our cars. So this is common on the roadways, but also in our driveways. So if you have a leaky car, a car that's leaking any type of oil or other pollutant, you want to make sure you get that fixed because that oil can be taken up by the stormwater and going into the storm drains. I'm sure we've all seen pictures like this or driven by areas like this where the mowing crew just came through and they mowed and they left and they didn't blow up the grass clippings back on the lawn. This is actually considered, this is actually illegal to do. You are required to blow those grass clippings back up onto the lawn or to bag them. It's illegal to keep them in the road or sidewalk or on the sidewalk because again, it can be taken up by the stormwater and it's a high pollutant in our waterways. So if you see any company that is not blowing their grass clippings back up onto the lawn or raking them up or sweeping them up, or believe it or not, I've seen people actually blow grass clippings down into the storm drain, you can report them because that is an illegal activity. It's called illicit discharge. So stormwater, we want to try to keep it on site because like I said, not only is it free water for our plants and for our landscape, we also want to reduce the pollution. We want to keep the stormwater on site so it can filter through our landscape and not pick up the pollutants along the way. So to do this, we can have pervious surfaces where the water can seep through. We can direct our downspouts from our roof into our landscape. We can collect the water on site through our rain gardens and also rain barrels. So let's discuss these options. So the first option is we can direct our downspouts to porous areas. So your downspout that's coming from your roof should be directed into one of your landscape beds or into the lawn, We don't want it to be directed onto the driveway or onto the sidewalk where it goes straight into the storm drain. You want to keep it on site, because if we can keep the water on site, it will filter down through the soil into the aquifer, and we will not only replenish the aquifer with water, but your plants will get water, and also it will be all the pollutants can be filtered out as it seeps through the soils. Another way to keep stormwater at home is to have porous surfaces like walkways, your patios, and driveways. If it's not just concrete, if you have pavers or even grass or pebbles, using rock as a cover where the water can get through into the ground, that's a way to help keep stormwater at home. You can also create swales. You probably have noticed these swales along the roadways. The one pictured here on the bottom is actually in a parking lot, and it is used, the purpose of those swales is to hold water. So where the runoff is coming from that parking lot, it goes into the swale first, and then it actually will filter down through the ground and be filtered out that way. Some of it might go into the storm drain. You see at the end of that photo there, but some of it will also seep down into the ground. Then there's rain barrels and cisterns. We won't talk too much about cisterns, but cisterns basically are just super large rain barrels. You can see the photo up on the top, that big gray barrel there. Some people will have those above ground. Some people will actually bury them in the ground and have their water source buried underneath the ground. But we will definitely talk about rain barrels. Rain barrels are something that's very simple to build, and you can actually create those at home, or you can purchase them already made for you. And they're very easy to add to your landscape, where you can save that rainwater, help collect it at home, and use it in your landscape. So rain barrels do help save water and money. The water that you do collect from the rain barrel should only be used for your landscape plants or your potted plants that are non-edible. We do not want to use the water collected in the rain barrel for our vegetable garden or any type of edible plants like herbs. And the reason is that water is collecting some pollutants when it comes off your roof. So it can collect bird poop and other animal stuff that might be up on your roof. Also the debris that may come from the shingles. So we don't want to, obviously you don't want to drink it, and we don't want to use it on anything edible, but it's perfectly fine to use in your landscape and in your potted non-edible plants. You can easily find rain barrels pre-made for you at the store, such as the photo on the right. That's one you just buy and you just can set it up pretty easily. Or also the one on the top left is also a store-bought one. Or you can make your own rain barrels like you see in that bottom picture. Those photos are from Polk County Master Gardeners from their extension office, where they actually built their own rain barrel and painted it. And that's very easy to do. And I'll give you some tips on how to build your own rain barrel. The first thing you need to build your own rain barrel is a container. So your container should be anywhere between 50 to 80 gallons. And if you don't have access to a blue container like you see over there on the right, those are commonly used for rain barrels, you can just get a trash can. A very large garbage can be easily used for a rain barrel. You can easily adapt it. The plastic drums are also great to use, but you want to make sure that you know what was in it before you use it. You don't want to get one of those drums that had harsh chemicals in them. Try to get one that might have had soap stored in it. I know some car washes will get those drums that will have soap in them. Sometimes some food manufacturers will have those drums that might have some corn syrup in it. I know when I was up in Orlando, we used to get those barrels from Coca-Cola from their factory, because they would get those barrels in a lot. Also wineries. One time we got those barrels from wineries that we used for a rain barrel workshop. But you want to make sure that either an edible product was in there before, or that it was a non-harsh product like soap or some type of oil. You want to make sure that has a lid on it, or if it doesn't have a lid, we can actually build a screen to put on it. And this is important to keep out mosquitoes, because here in Florida, as you know, any water that is stagnant will draw the mosquitoes. And we want to make sure that we don't create a mosquito breeding area with our rain barrel. We're going to need to have a spigot or faucet connected to it so we can have access to the water, so you don't have to take off the lid and just dip it with a ladle, which is perfectly fine. You can do that, but it's much easier to have a spigot attached to it. And also we need an overflow hole. So this is just a hole that you can stick at the top so that if when it gets too full, that there's an outlet for that excess water so it doesn't bust through the top of your rain barrel. So here's another photo. This might be hard for you to see, but this is just a side version. You can see you might have to adapt your downspout from your house into the rain barrel. If you don't have a downspout, you can just place your rain barrel where all the water comes off your house. Maybe it's the corner of your house where all the water is directed from the roof. But anywhere where you can collect water. I mean, it can even be out in the open to collect rain during a heavy rainstorm. It doesn't have to be at a downspout, but you're going to definitely get more water if you have it near that downspout. Again, you want to have a type of lid or screen on it to deter the mosquitoes, to keep them out, and then have a runoff pipe or a hole that excess water can come out of it. If you put a pipe in there for the water to come out, you want to make sure that it's at an angle so it doesn't get clogged with anything. Then you want to also make sure that your rain barrel is up about a foot off the ground, so you can get your hose or your watering can underneath that spigot so you can get the water. So elevated about a foot. And it's also a good idea to make sure you have a gravel footing for it to keep it sturdy, because when filled with water, these barrels can be very, very heavy. So be careful what you set it on. You don't want to set it on your deck if it's not sturdy enough to hold the weight of that rain barrel when it's full. So here's some photos. I wanted to give you some close-up photos of the top of the rain barrel. So it's the same rain barrel with different tops. The one on the middle has just a screen on it. The screen keeps out the mosquitoes, but allows the water to flow freely into the rain barrel from the top. And then on the bottom, they took the same lid, but instead of cutting out the whole lid, the whole circle, they only cut out a little rectangle, just enough so that downspout can go into the rain barrel directly. So if you have a few options there, either works fine. It doesn't matter. Whatever works best for your situation is great for the rain barrel. Now, some people also get very fancy where they will take their one rain barrel. You can see there on the top right or top left photo, there's two blue rain barrels. They'll have one that's elevated higher, and then the overflow spout from the first rain barrel, the high one, is going directly into the second rain barrel. So this is two rain barrels, one downspout, but the overflow goes into that second rain barrel. So that's another way to save even more water in your landscape, and very, very easy to do with just having that hose from the overflow on top going into that second rain barrel. Then I also have a photo on the bottom right, and those look like donuts, but they're not donuts. We actually call them mosquito dunks. You can get these at any garden center, and sometimes it will come in a pellet form, or you can get them in these dunks, and you can even crush the dunks. But what this is, it's called BT, or Bacillus thuringiensis, and it's a natural bacterium that kills mosquito larvae. It's very safe to use in gardens, very safe to use in your rain barrel. It doesn't hurt any other organism except for mosquito larvae. So it's you can put it in any stagnant water. You can put it in your rain barrel if you notice you're getting mosquitoes in somehow. And it, like I said, it's very safe to use. And these are available just about anywhere. Again, you can get them formed as these dunks that you just plop into your rain barrel, or you can also get it as a pellet. Some people will use the pellets in their bromeliads if they feel like their bromeliads are starting to attract mosquitoes. So once you have your rain barrel built, it's time to paint it. Some people love to get very creative with the rain barrels and paint them. I love these that I found from my colleagues across the state. One they made look like a ladybug. One's painted with bamboo, and then the final one just has a nice garden scene on it. So you can camouflage it to kind of blend in with the background. Maybe you just want to paint it brown or green to blend in with your plants, or you can get creative and paint it any way you want. And this is a great project for kids too. So if you have any kids or grandkids in your life, you can have them paint your rain barrel, and then they'll feel like they're part of the project. Now, I do understand that some homeowner associations don't allow rain barrels because they don't think they're look good enough, or they might think they're unsightly, but we have a solution for that. You can actually disguise your rain barrel. You can get these really fancy, nice looking rain barrels that most people probably wouldn't even know it's a rain barrel unless you tell them. So these are bought. You could actually probably make one too. Actually, the photo on the far left is made, and I took that picture from HGTV. That barrel there, the instructions on the HGTV website will have the instructions on how to make that barrel. It actually has just a plastic drum underneath, and then they put the wood around it and stained it to make it look really nice. But you can see from most people, this might just look like a planter, just a very high planter. They might not even know it's a rain barrel. So that you can get really pretty rain barrels there that you can kind of disguise and add to your landscape without the HOA even noticing. All different styles out there. With also, to keep stormwater at home, you can use rain gardens in your landscape. So the rain gardens are another way to keep that stormwater at home. The purpose of a rain garden is to return the water to the aquifer. It helps to reduce erosion, and it prevents stormwater runoff. So as the water is attracted and directed to your rain garden, the rain garden helps to filter the impurities, all the pollutants, before the rain actually drains into the aquifer. It also prevents the rain from going on the impervious surfaces and picking up all the pollutants like fertilizer and grass clippings and oil, and then going into the waterways. So rain gardens are great to add to your landscape, and they're not very hard to add either. So all it is a low area in your landscape that's planted with plants that like to get their feet or their roots wet. So you can do this a number of ways. Here's an example of a very large rain garden. So in this area, all the stormwater from the impervious surfaces, you can see there's a parking lot on the top of that little hill, plus that road there. All the water is directed into this low area in the landscape that's planted with plants. And all the water in that area will collect the water. The water will slowly drain down into the aquifer. But of course, you don't need to have anything this big in your landscape. It can be just a small area. Rain gardens can be located at the bottom of your downspouts. So if you have one area for your rain barrel, but then you have another area down on the other downspout for your rain garden, that's a great way to do it. Or any naturally low area in your landscape, or you can create a low area in your landscape. So kind of watch the flow of the water in your landscape, and if you whatever direction the water flows, that is a place to add your rain garden. Sometimes a lot of times that's towards the sidewalk or towards the street, because with most design, the water from your yard is going down into the storm drain. That's the design of it, but we want to keep that water on site. When we plant our rain garden, we need to make sure that we get the right plant for the right place. So we need to select plants for the right sun conditions, whether the rain garden is going to be in a shady or sunny area. And we also need to select plants that can survive dry spells, because rain gardens aren't always wet. We also have dry periods here in Florida. And today it rained, but it hasn't rained for a couple weeks. So this was a welcome rain today. But those plants that were planted in a rain garden survive because they are adapted to either having wet or dry feet or roots. So let's talk about some of those plants. Well, I'm going to give you another diagram of rain garden, and then we're going to talk about some of the plants that you can add into your rain garden. So here's just a side view of a rain garden. You can see it has a slight slope to it. The depth only has to be 4 to 8 inches deep. It doesn't have to be a big hole that you dig in your landscape. So this is just a slight indentation where the rain can collect and the stormwater can collect on your landscape. The size all depends. In general, it should be about 5 to 10% of all the impervious surfaces. So if you have maybe, let's say you have 1,000 feet of driveway, patio, and sidewalk, then you want your rain garden should be anywhere from 50 square feet to 100 square feet, just to help offset all the impervious surfaces that you have in your landscape around your home. You don't really need to add any amendments to the rain garden, but if you did, you may want to add a little bit of topsoil and some compost in there to amend the soil a little bit. This diagram here says that it should be about 65% sand, 15% topsoil, and 25% compost. Well, here in Martin County, our soil is already sand, so we don't need to add any sand for drainage, but you might want to add a little bit of topsoil and compost to mix in with that sand, but it's not necessary. The plants that we're going to add to our rain garden that we're going to talk about today, all of them are Florida friendly plants, and the majority of them are also native plants and do very well in our landscapes here. So what are some of the plants? Everybody loves flowers, so I thought I'd start out with the flowering plants that can be added to your rain garden. The first one is the blue flag iris, and I'm sure you guys can pick that one out from the photos there. It's the blue one. We can't grow the bearded irises like they do up north. I know a lot of people that come from up north want to plant the bearded irises, but they just do not do well here in hot Florida. But we do have the native blue flag iris that you can plant in your landscape and also in your rain garden. The next one is goldenrod. You can see goldenrod is in the top middle, the yellow one in the middle with the bee. There's a bee on there, a bumblebee. The bees do love it. This is an easy plant to grow. However, if you have high allergies to flowers, this is a high allergen plant, so you might want to stay away from the goldenrod, but it does do well in the rain garden. And then there's the swamp sunflower. So just like its name, swamp, it doesn't mind to have wet feet or wet roots, but it also can be tolerant of dry conditions. And it looks just like a mini sunflower and a native plant to Florida. There's also the spider lily, which is the white flower in the middle. You can see how it gets its name because it has those little spikes on it that looks like, and legs that look like little spiders. And then also the native milkweed for Florida. So there's a lot of tropical milkweed that are great for butterfly gardens, but the native milkweed will do the best in your rain garden. Then there are some ornamental grasses that do well in rain gardens that don't mind getting their feet wet. There's the Fakahatchee grass, which is the top left photo. This is a large grass, so it's going to take up a large area. So if you just have a small garden, you might want to keep this one out of the garden, or if you just want to, if you have a small rain garden and you only want one plant in it, you can put the Fakahatchee grass there. The bottom one, the pink one, is the muhly grass. The muhly grass is one of my favorite native grasses because it blooms in the fall and gets these beautiful rosy red, pink flowers to it. And then the rest of the time, it does have nice green leaves. And then there's wiregrass. Wiregrass is the photo on the right. It looks a lot like the Fakahatchee grass just from the photo, but the leaves are much thinner. That's why it's called wiregrass. And it's a much smaller grass also. So these three are ornamental grasses that are native to Florida and great to add to your rain garden. Now, if you have a larger rain garden, you might want to add some shrubs or small trees. And that can include the Virginia willow. So the Virginia willow, even though it says Virginia in the name, it is native from on the East Coast of the United States. So it's also native to Florida. And that's the photo on the bottom right that has those off-white color flowers that you see on it. Then there's the button bush. The button bush can be a silver button bush like the photo on the bottom left, or it could be the green button bush that we have here in Florida. Both are native and both do well in the rain garden. And I do like the silver button bush because it gives a different color in the foliage. And then there is the wax myrtle. The wax myrtle is the tree in the top photo, which can also be a shrub as well as a tree. This one particular on it has been, excuse me, this one has been pruned up into the shape of a tree, but you can keep the lower branches on it to be more shrub-like if you prefer. But all three of these will do great in the rain garden. Then we do have some great Florida-friendly plants. So I listed these. They do well in the rain garden, but they aren't native to Florida, but they are considered Florida-friendly plants. And if you remember from the first class, Florida-friendly plants do well in Florida. They are not invasive and they have low inputs and are pretty much pest resistant. So that's why they're considered Florida-friendly. And some of the flowering plants that are Florida friendly that you can add to the landscape include the African iris, which is one of my favorites. That's the white flower on the far left. You can also get this with a yellow flower. And has this one, the white flower has a purple middle to it. It's a really pretty flower. Canna lilies, which is the yellow flower in the middle. Canna lilies can come in red, orange, or yellow. They can also become in variegated foliage, like a red foliage, and they do well in the rain gardens. They like their feet wet, but can also take some drought conditions. We have the shrimp plant, which is the bottom right, which is the pink shrimp plant on the bottom right, but also there's the yellow shrimp plant that can be planted in the rain garden also. A holly fern, so if you want just some green texture in the rain garden, the holly fern will do well, and that's in the top right photo there. There's no flowers on the ferns, but they do provide some great color, some great texture. And then also there's St. Bernard's lily. St. Bernard's lily is the bottom photo in the middle with the whispery leaves and white flowers that stick above the plumes of flowers that stick above the leaves. So these are considered Florida-friendly plants for the rain garden. So that concludes the session, the principle number 8, which is reduce stormwater runoff. So if you have any questions about principle number 8, you can put those in the chat and I'll catch up with them at the end of the class. But we're going to move on to principle number 9, which is protect the waterfront. So every Florida home is waterfront property. And you're probably thinking, wait, I live 12 miles from the ocean and I don't live on a retention pond. But we have to remember that everything that we do in our landscape eventually goes into the water. So we need to make sure that we fertilize appropriately, we water efficiently, and we do all the right practices to help to reduce pollution into our waterways. So we need to do this as a whole, because if we can do this, if everybody can practice these Florida friendly practices, that's going to, as a whole, clean up our water. So we also want to know our watershed. So our watershed is probably a larger than you can imagine. Oops, I thought I put a slide in there, but I don't see it. So our watershed actually starts in the Orlando area, pretty much right where Disney is. That's the beginning of our watershed. That's where Shingle Creek starts, and Shingle Creek goes into the lake system that's in the Kissimmee area, which goes down the Kissimmee River into Lake Okeechobee, and then, as you know, goes into our area and out into the ocean. So that's and into the Everglades, I should say too. So that's our watershed. It starts in south of Orlando, all the way down through the Everglades is our watershed. So you can imagine all the ways that the water can pick up pollutants along the way. So what we can do, though, if you do live along the water, you want to make sure that you have a 10-foot maintenance-free zone along the water. So if you live near a retention pond, a lake, a stream, a river, a canal, we want to make sure that we don't have any activity near the water. So we definitely don't want to fertilize near the water, especially if you're on a slope, because that fertilizer can go straight into the water with the stormwater, with the rain. We also want to make sure that we don't have any grass clippings in the water. Remember, grass clippings are very high in nitrogen, and nitrogen is a pollutant into our waterways. So if we do mow, we want to make sure that the grass clippings are blown the opposite direction from the water. But the best practice is to have a 10-foot no mow, no fertilizer, no irrigation, no maintenance zone, if possible. And I know a lot of homeowner associations and even a lot of communities don't like the look of a no mow zone. So this particular picture here, they just let the plants grow. They let the grass grow to add as a buffer. So those plants that just naturally grow up, you'd be amazed if you stop mowing an area, what natural plants and native plants will start emerging, growing from the soil. But they can collect the pollutants that come down before it enters into the water. They can help absorb some excess fertilizers. They can help to absorb other pollutants. They can actually collect trash from keeping the trash from going in the water. So it's really important to have that no maintenance zone around the water. Now, we talked about fertilizing around the water. I want to have Dr. Trenholm, who we saw in some earlier presentations, talk about how do you fertilize when you do live along the water. Let me play this video.
Welcome to Your Florida Lawn, the environmentally friendly way to grow and sustain a Florida-friendly landscape. Your host is Dr. Lori Trenholm, residential turfgrass specialist with the University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences. Join Lori and her special guests as they offer tips and solutions to maintaining a Florida-friendly lawn.
Living on the waterfront in Florida can pose many challenges, including how we manage our lawns. Fertilization practices are extremely important anytime we're managing lawns close to water bodies. The Florida green industry's best management practices have been developed for preservation of Florida's water bodies, and part of this program deals extensively with how to properly apply fertilizer to your lawn. To stay healthy and provide good ground cover, lawns need nutrients. Some of these nutrients come from the air and some come from the soil. Some will need to be applied as fertilizer. Lawns should be fertilized during the times when they are actively growing, which is primarily the spring and summer months throughout Florida. The target for the fertilizer is the root of the plant, meaning that you need to apply the fertilizer uniformly to the surface of the lawn and then water it in with a small amount of water, about 1/4 of an inch, to move it to the roots for best uptake. Here are some key points to remember when fertilizing your lawn so that the fertilizer stays on the grass and out of the water body. First, make sure you apply fertilizer at the recommended University of Florida rates. Over-fertilization can increase the tendency for the nutrients to move on down through the soil. Also, don't fertilize before a heavy rainfall, and when you irrigate after fertilization, apply only 1/4 of an inch of water. Be sure also that if you get fertilizer on an impervious surface like this sidewalk behind us, that you sweep it up or it will wind up in the water body, and be sure to stay 10 foot away from water bodies anytime you're fertilizing. Always follow the UF-IFAS fertilizer recommendations for your particular grass species and your location in the state. For more information on fertilizer rates, refer to yourfloridalawn.ifas.
All right. Well, thank you to Dr. Trenholm for just reinforcing the statement of not fertilizing and having no maintenance zone along the edge of the water. Now, some people may not like the look of just letting your grass grow and see what plants come up along the water. So you can actually plant some plants, especially native plants or Florida-friendly plants along the water edge. And those plants can also absorb the water. So these are plants that you still wouldn't add fertilizer to, you still wouldn't add supplemental irrigation to. So they're ones there that you'll get them established, and then they'll live on just the rainfall alone, but they will be there to help filter the pollutants and also collect trash. They can absorb nutrients. They can reduce algal blooms by collecting those nutrients and trash, and they can also create a habitat for wildlife right along the water's edge. So these planted buffer zones do provide that filtration and reduces the runoff. So you can see the photos here. There's some bald cypress. Bald cypress are great trees to add along the edge. They can help absorb those nutrients. You see just some Florida-friendly grasses and lilies that are planted on the picture on the right. And then there's also some plants that are what are referred to as submerged plants that are actually added right in the water that can also work to absorb some of the nutrients that might happen to get into that waterway. Now here in South Florida, we do have a lot of seawalls and riprap. So riprap is the rocks that they pile along the edge of the water to help with erosion. So both of these do great with erosion control. However, if they don't have any plants that are planted as a buffer, any trash, nutrients, pollutions can go straight into the water and stormwater. So we want to make sure that we either well, the best practice would be to actually have a planting along the seawall, like you can see in the photos there, to help absorb the water. And there's some areas here in Stewart where this is being done to help with the pollution to keep the pollution from going into the water. And this is called seawall redemption. So we're enhancing the habitat, whether it be with mangroves or Florida-friendly plants, or even having oyster marshes that are in the water, because oysters actually help clean the water. So you can create little oyster habitats if you live in along the water that they can be used to clean the water for us too. Then there's also living shoreline. So if you don't have a seawall, but you still live along the waterway, you can have a living shoreline that can absorb the nutrients. And this program is actually taught by my colleague here in Martin County, Dr. Vincent Encomio. So he does classes with the water ambassadors, and he also is working on some living shoreline projects here in Martin County. So you can contact him, or you can keep an eye out on our Facebook page and get some updates on some of the living shorelines that we're having here in Martin County. And a living shoreline is an area managed with restoration techniques that uses natural materials such as oyster reefs, mangroves, and marsh grasses to stabilize the areas, which helps prevent erosion and also protect the property and more importantly, collect all the nutrients before it heads into the waterways. Also, with protecting the waterfront, we want to make sure that we remove any invasive species. We do have a lot of invasive species here in Florida, and a lot of them like to show up along the waterways. You want to keep those invasive species out so that we can keep the native plants and the Florida-friendly plants growing, and which also helps with our wildlife. So Brazilian pepper, Kogan grass are two examples that are just taking over areas, not only along the shorelines and near the water's edge, but also in our natural areas. So in review for today's presentation, we want to make sure that we reduce our stormwater runoff by keeping stormwater on site. We want to make sure we reduce our pollutants by making sure our cars aren't leaking oil. We pick up after our pets. We only fertilize appropriately. We water efficiently and do all those important Florida-friendly landscaping practices to reduce the pollutants. We also want to make sure that we protect the waterfront. Have a no mow or no maintenance zone 10 feet from any water's edge. Make sure that we have plantings along the water to help absorb some of those nutrients and pollutants. And again, practice all of our 9 Florida-friendly principles, including sweeping up the grass clippings and any fertilizer that might end on the impervious surfaces. So that's it. We went through all 9 principles in 7 weeks. So if you missed one of these sessions, let me know and I can send you out the recording. But you can also look back at the Florida-friendly landscaping book if you have any other questions on that. And I also want to give you a heads up on some of the upcoming classes that we have. So these are the ones that are currently scheduled. Most likely there'll be some more scheduled. So either join my email list, my newsletter list, or follow us on Facebook for the information on these. So these classes are still going to be webinar classes. And on Tuesday, April 27th at 7 p.m., we're going to do edible landscaping. So how to add some edible plants, mix that in with your traditional landscape. On Tuesday, May 11th, we're going to do Florida Friendly Landscaping for Florida's Coral Reef webinar. So this is a joint presentation that we're going to do with other counties throughout southeastern Florida. Wednesday, May 19th, we're going to do gardening for butterflies and other pollinators. And that's going to be Wednesday at 11 a.m. And then on the 23rd, we're going to celebrate tropical fruit time of the year, which is in the summer when a lot of our tropical fruits are ready for harvest. And we're going to learn about pruning tropical fruit trees. And we're going to have a guest speaker from Miami-Dade County, Jeff Wazaleski, who's a tropical fruits agent, is going to speak on that one. So I hope you can join us for some of the upcoming programs. And like I said, we always have new ones scheduled. So make sure you either sign up for my newsletter or follow us on Facebook, Martin County Extension, and you'll get those updates. A list of resources is going to be emailed to you on the principles number 8 and 9, reduce stormwater runoff and protect the waterfront. Also, if you have any gardening questions, you can contact the Martin County Master Gardeners at their email address or telephone number. And there's the link to sign up for my newsletter, tinyurl.com/mymartincountyyard. And I will send you that link in the email I send you this afternoon. So can you make sure you can sign up so you're always aware of some of our upcoming classes. And with that, I thank everybody for joining me today. And if you have any questions, you can write those in the chat. I don't see any questions coming up right now, but I hope you guys learned a lot today and learned a lot through the last 7 weeks. And again, if you have questions, you can always email me. You have my email address and I will get back to you with the information that you request. If there aren't any other questions, thanks everybody. And I hope to see you at some of our upcoming classes in the next few months. Take care.